J. Smith Cameron stars in the third season of Succession on HBO. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. Jay, I want to start where the season begins because Gerri is named interim CEO of Waystar during kind of the height of the company scandal. So I wanted to start by asking you, do you think Gerri sees that as an opportunity or is it a liability? And what do you think makes Gerri so right for the role? Because she really does seem competent enough to take on the task.
Right. Well, I think that Gerri sort of established from the very beginning of season 1 that she doesn't want she'd rather be the power behind the throne in a way, because she doesn't want to be in the line of fire. And I think she's, however, maybe the only one skillful enough to steer them away from the rocks, which we get to see in season 3, where, to my knowledge, maybe the only person who has yelled at Logan Roy and got her way. You know what I mean? So I think she's definitely chuffed to get named, but I don't think things change very much. She's still been doing all that stuff already. And now she's just, the bucks has to stop with her more obviously. And she knows it's an interim measure. But she does somehow get them out of trouble. And I think her instincts are so good. Like so yeah, I mean, I think she's excited to be named it, but also wary. But then I think nothing changes that much because she's already been doing everything. And she continues to serve in that capacity. I wanted to tell you something. I went to the White House Correspondents' Dinner recently. And I met this young woman who covers like corporate white collar crime. And she was interviewing a law firm, a fancy law firm. And she said, she was asking this one guy what he did on the team. And he said, "Oh, I Gerri things." So I think it's like become a thing of like, she knows how to talk the talk and walk the walk to kind of circumvent the problems while being still on the ambitious path. That was a long answer, sorry.
No, that's great. No, that's such a perfect, I think that's a great verb that we should start using to Gerri things.
Gerri things, yeah.
You mentioned, one of the scenes you just mentioned is when Gerri confronts Logan during the FBI raid, which is one of my favorite moments for you in the whole season is, the FBI is at the door, Logan is still being defiant, and Gerri does have to, kind of yell at Logan to convince him to cooperate, because otherwise would be catastrophe. So I wanted to ask you, maybe it ties into what you just said, but why is Gerri the one to actually get through to him? Because other people have tried to convince him to cooperate from the very beginning of the season, but Gerri is finally the one to persuade him to do so.
Well, there's a lot behind that, because first of all, the very first scene that Gerri is in the season, when they're still in the airport in Croatia, coming home, and this news is hit, and right away, I'm advocating for cooperation and angling for that already, and already talking to the White House and putting her neck out. And that becomes a theme for Gerri through the season. Like, she's pressing for that and pressing for it. And then I think she just is she knows she's right. And I think Logan deep down knows Gerri's always right. So I think it just had to come to a Logan level boil, which is hotter than water boil. So it has a higher temperature than, it's like boiling, like melting metal or something, right? She doesn't blow her stack very often. She's not comfortable doing it. Maybe she knows there's a lot of anger in there and a lot of power in there, and she's a little bit afraid of it. So I think Logan intuits that.
Yeah.
So when I lose my shit at him, he's like, "Oh, I better pay attention. Okay, Mama's yelling at me now." That's what I think.
No, I wanted to ask you too, like going toe to toe with Brian Cox, as you're saying, when things come to a boil, Logan is very volcanic. So I just wanted to ask you about going toe to toe with Brian when he's at that pitch.
Well, he's scary. But I also am so fond of him. He's also like a great guy and an actor's actor, like he's a thespian, and he really relishes, what makes a scene great is conflict. So even though your character is dreading the conflict, the actor in you is relishing it. It's what makes a scene, right? It's what otherwise there'd be no drama in it. And so he's wonderful to act those scenes with, but he's a little terrifying.
Yeah, I can imagine. Another episode that is just so great for Gerri is that shareholder meeting. And it's one of my favorites of the season because it is the kind of perfect succession balance of high stakes drama and just ludicrous farce. I mean, it's so delightful. I just wanted to ask you about navigating the tone of the series, especially in an episode like that, which, has so many peaks and valleys.
Yeah, that's a good question because it's one of the tricky things about our show. I've always thought it was a dark comedy, and there are other actors on the show that might think it's a Shakespearean tragedy with some funny comic relief here and there, and we're both right. The great thing about the ensemble as written and as cast is that we can tip into a Preston Sturges screwball comedy at any moment. Like we're all Broadway hands, like we can really do that. And then, the other people in suits, all the fellas, in my opinion, this is me talking, they're always passing the buck. They're always trying to agree with Logan. There's a million scenes where like, oh, we can't let him do that. We can't let him do that. And then he walks up and everybody's like, yeah, maybe that would be interesting. And Gerri's going like, right, okay, so I've got to do this all myself, that's a repeating theme. So I think we now have that down, like Fisher and David Rashi and Peter and Dag Mara, and all of us have kind of gotten into a groove of like, it's high stakes, but we're all hiding behind our titles. We're not really going to go in the line of, we're not going to go before the guns, so it's always been teetering on a level of farce in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've done farce on stage before, and you have extensive stage experience. I just wanted to ask you, when you get to do these episodes with a huge ensemble, 10, 12 plus actors, how fun is it for you? And how much does that theater experience really help when, you're doing these huge scenes and long scenes?
Well, this show is definitely draws on theater. I mean, it's definitely a boon that so many of us are from a theater background. Pretty much everyone that I can think of has done a lot of plays, and it really does serve, because it's an ensemble has to do with throwing the ball back. You get thrown the ball and you throw it back. So it's like being on a team or playing chamber music or playing in an orchestra. You have to know when you have the melody, and then when you're playing harmony, and you throw the focus over to the bassoon who has the melody for a moment, and that's so that wasn't an all Broadway analogy. It was also, I grew up playing the violin, so I was in an orchestra and in chamber music and stuff. So I think of that all the time, about the musical dynamics. And this piece is both theatrical and musical in that way, and has a lot of artful arrangement in the dynamics, So I think it's really been helpful for all of us. And I don't think Jesse's a theater person, but there are people on his writing staff who've written for theater, like Lucy and Susan, and probably more. But it definitely, yes, I think it definitely has. And also in the theater, you play lots of different tones that you don't necessarily do on camera, like not just farce, but like lots of everything in between farce and situation comedy. And, like there's all kinds of degrees of it. It's not just like an on and off switch. It's like a whole scale. And I think theater actors kind of do that without, we've all done it for decades. So we're like the wheels are greased. And I feel like we can kind of almost intuit the little shifts in the dynamic and go with it. And it's really a joy. It's really such an ensemble. I can't tell you how happy I am working with these people.
Yeah, and
Everything.
you're so right. Your comparison to music is so fitting because the dialogue really sings. I mean, it's just it's incredible and crackles. It's terrific. Um, okay, I have to ask you about the continuing dynamic between Gerri and Roman, which people just absolutely love on this series. And this season, you know, Gerri begins by saying, you know, she's kept her way out of mess, right? In the first episode, she says, you know, I'm going to be CEO because, you know, I've always kept myself clean. Of course, Roman becomes a complication for Gerri. So I just wanted to ask you, you know, from your perspective, what is it about Roman that is really a blind spot for Gerri? She tries to set lines and boundaries, but you know, she can't seem to get him to do what he should do, and it kind of comes back and implodes on the both of them.
Yeah, I think at first she's appalled by the whole idea that he can't really say he fancies her, whatever it is he feels for her, whatever perverse thing he's up to. You can't really say she's into that, but I think she sees a clever, humorous, attractive, charismatic Roy, who is perhaps moldable and a diamond in the rough, and that she probably, there's some part of her that would love a you know, an opportunity to have a protege and to have an, you know, an accomplice to work with that she would have more say with. And so I think during season 3, there's this little, we're both in this relationship, but we're clearly going on after different things. And his interest is sexual, I guess, and hers is business. She's trying to really see if they can take that energy and make it into something professional. And I first give him that line, like, that's not in your interests. You should always act in your interest. You should have that tattooed on your forehead. You know, that's what, and then that comes back to haunt him because he doesn't pay any attention. He's like, he can't stop fooling around. So, but I feel like, to answer your question better, I think that even throughout that, beginning with the first time in season 2, I guess, when he calls her up on the phone, and she's just, it takes her even a minute to figure out what's going on. She's so like, does not expect that. And I think that from that time, he slowly gets under her skin, like in spite of everything. I said to Jesse, I said, I don't know. I feel like a huge affection now for him, which doesn't really go with my, you know, brand as Gerri, but I think in some way, and I said, is that all wrong? And he said, well, you know, Jay, in many ways, you're the world's authority on Gerri. Like, you know what I mean? We write for you, but you're the constant in every episode, and you have helped create this part. And so if you think something deeply, it must be true. So it's a really unique show in that way, that it works that way. And this is definitely a unique role for me. The idea that I would have so much influence on shaping the character. So I'm not sure what's going to happen in season 4, because they definitely broke up at the end of the season. And yet I just think feelings run very high between them. I know they do for Gerri. I think the writers always felt Roman had real feelings for Gerri, however twisted they were. But I feel like by now there's something about him got under her skin. So I don't know. I actually don't know anything. I can't guess a thing about next season. And they're very tight-lipped. But I mean, all these things that are left torn open, I have no idea what comes next, you know, including Roman and Gerri.
Yeah, I spoke to Matthew last week or the week before, and he said the same thing. He doesn't know a single detail. So
Right.
I won't ask you about teasers because it's very clear that everybody's in the dark, which must
Right.
be exciting for you guys to see what's coming next when you get those scripts. I do want to ask you about that season finale, which I think was so shocking for all the viewers. That final scene is absolutely incredible. So I want to ask you about Gerri in particular in that last episode, because during the wedding, Gerri is a bit in the dark as well, and seems to be as kind of upset as the Roy children about some of the maneuvers that she's seeing, the financiers coming in and, is confused and concerned. So what do you think it is that Logan says to Gerri to get her on board with selling the company and kind of getting eaten by Gojo instead of, the opposite?
I think she's just waiting to be tapped, to be in the inner circle and on the project. I think what worries her is that she hasn't been tapped yet. She always gets tapped. And so for me, I don't know if this is what the writers intended, but when Zoe Winters, who plays Carrie, comes and fetches her at the table and says, "Oh, well, you don't hear us, I think," but she whispers something to the effect of, "Logan's or sent a car for you, right now." And I quickly gather my things and teeter off on my high heels in the grass. And I think Roman and Shiv notice it, like, what's up over there? And so that, and remember, then it's later that they begin to realize that Carl gets folded in and Frank gets folded in. So, and it's still not clear to me though that Lucas Matsson's gonna want to work with any of us. So all I know is they picked up my option for season 4, so I'm in there somewhere, but I don't know.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. And before I let you go, too, I just want to ask you, take us inside that room in Italy for the final scene, because you're in that whole scene with the children confronting Logan, and then Tom, the realization of Tom's betrayal. Just talk about shooting that final scene, and just what was the mood in that room?
Oh, I will talk about this with pleasure. No one's asked about this. First of all, the whole time I was in Italy, I had heat stroke on and off. The first scene we shot, I was overdressed in fall wardrobe. We were on a tarmac at an airport at high noon in a terrific temperature. And I just we all kept forging on because all of us are sort of troopers. And when they went to take my hair down, there was like basically steam coming off. Anyway, I was sick on and off the whole time because we shot, like, that wedding was out in the blazing sun. They gave us all straw hats so we wouldn't be quite as miserable. So when we got into that room, first of all, it was literally and figuratively a climate change. Suddenly we were in this cool, austere, kind of a Medici room, like it looked like rich people from 500 years ago had sat here and plotted, and the change up of being out and sweaty in the wedding for the actors and for the characters, and then to be in this cool stone walls, villa with just a few speaking quiet voices. It was like, like the sweat dries on the back of your neck, and it's this eerie, like, chill goes down you. And then the little bombshells that happen, even though we learned the lines and we know where they are, watching them all, like, no one knows quite who knows what. No one knows what the kids will do. No one knows what Brian will do, and the little thing that happens at the end between Shiv and Tom, like, we're to varying degrees picking up on it. We don't really know what happened either, and I want to say, like, Kieran was so upset. I mean, he was kind of shaky and his eyes were pink, like he was wet. They were like, he was really deeply rattled. It was very hard to look at him in that scene, like, very, very hard. On top of it all, not for nothing, but we're close friends, so it was in real life. So it was a very momentous thing. I mean, I remember just trying to look away from his eyes and look at my notes and and just try to get that line out as matter-of-factly as possible. When I wanted to blurt, Gerri's not the type to blurt things, but Jay wanted to blurt, "Listen, you brought this on yourself, and I work for this company. I'm not married to you. I'm not involved with you. I do work for this company. That's my role here." So we all had this sharp comeuppance with each other, and it was just the whole climate, and also the way they dressed us. Like, I don't know what you know about, like, Renaissance or Mannerist art, but though it looked like, to me, I'm just an aficionado. I don't know a lot about it either, but everyone was wearing these, like, jewel tones, and they all had a sheen, so it looked like that Bronzinos, like these cold portraits of Medici. It was fantastic. It was like, I'll never forget it. It was just a real, in every sense was fired up. How's
Yeah.
that for an answer?
Phenomenal. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is. It is a season finale for the ages. I think people are still, shocked by it and just adore the episode. J. Smith Cameron, congratulations on the third season of Succession. Thanks so much for
Thank
talking to Gold Derby.
you. My pleasure.